Well, welcome to Dirty Secrets, the channel where the truth can't stay hidden. Sometimes the truth hides in plain sight, not in locked diaries, not behind whispered conversations, not even in distant hotel rooms. Sometimes it hides in something as ordinary as a glowing phone screen on a nightstand. And sometimes all it takes is one careless message to unravel an entire web of lies. Tonight's story is about Claire, a woman who believes she had it all. A relationship built on love, on laughter, on trust. To her friends, to her family, and even to herself, Tom seemed like the man of her dreams. But trust is fragile. And betrayal doesn't always arrive with sirens and alarms. Sometimes it tiptoes in, disguised as something harmless. For Claire, it was just one notification, one preview of a message. And in that instant, the foundation of her world began to crack. This is the story of how a few hidden messages exposed a devastating betrayal. Claire and Tom had been together for 4 years. 4 years of shared memories, of whispered secrets, of inside jokes only they understood. Their relationship was the kind people pointed to and said, "That's what I want someday." Vacations in the mountains, where they hiked until their legs ached and fell asleep under blankets of stars. Road trips with playlists that became the soundtrack of their lives. Dinner parties, where Tom would charm her friends, making everyone laugh until the room felt lighter. Claire often looked at him across a crowded room and thought, "This is it. He's the one." On Instagram, their photos glowed with happiness. Matching smiles, sunsets on the beach, champagne glasses clinking on New Year's Eve. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple. And in many ways, Claire believed that too. But perfect things often hide cracks. It started slowly, a little more distance, a little less eye contact. Tom, once so attentive, seemed distracted. His phone, which used to sit openly on the table, was now always in his pocket, always locked, always face down. At dinner, he would smile at something on the screen, fingers tapping quickly, then tilt it away when she leaned closer. "Who's that?" Claire would ask lightly. He would shrug. "Work stuff. You wouldn't be interested?" And then change the subject. At first, she believed him. Why wouldn't she? He had a demanding job. Co-workers who texted late. She told herself it was normal. Everyone gets busy. Everyone has private conversations. But the small things piled up. The sudden late nights at the office. The vague excuses about team projects. The way he seemed present in body but far away in mind. Claire's gut whispered what her heart didn't want to hear. Something wasn't right. It was just after midnight when Claire stirred awake. The room was dark, silent except for the low hum of the heater. Tom lay beside her, breathing steadily in the deep rhythm of sleep. But something had pulled her out of her dreams. A sound. Buzz. She blinked, adjusting to the glow. There, on the nightstand, Tom's phone lit up. A rectangle of light in the darkness. Claire wasn't the type to snoop. She prided herself on trust, on being the partner who didn't invade privacy. But something about the timing, the secrecy, gnawed at her. Another vibration. The screen flashed again, and this time, she saw it. A name, saved as a man's contact. But the preview of the message told another story. "Can't wait to feel your arms around me again." Her body went cold. Claire's mind stalled, like a computer crashing under too much weight. Her first thought, it has to be a mistake. Her second, maybe it's an inside joke. Maybe it means nothing. Her third, the one that lodged in her chest like ice. He's cheating. She stared at the message until the screen dimmed, the glow fading back into black. Her heartbeat roared in her ears. She felt the heat rise in her face, her hands trembling under the covers. She glanced at Tom. His eyes were closed, his breathing slow, peaceful. Unaware that with one careless notification his entire lie had begun to unravel. Every instinct screamed at her to grab the phone, to swipe, to open the thread and see everything. But another voice whispered, "If you look, you'll never unsee it. If you open it, there's no going back." So she lay there, torn between the desperate need to know and the desperate wish to stay in the safe ignorance of before. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. She pressed her hands to her chest, trying to calm the storm inside. Finally, she made a choice. She would wait. She would watch. She would gather proof before she let herself believe the worst. Because once you accuse someone of betrayal, there's no undoing it. By sunrise, Tom was cheerful, casual, sipping coffee in the kitchen, as if the night had been ordinary. He kissed her cheek before heading out the door, his gym bag slung over his shoulder. Claire smiled back, but inside, her world had shifted. She replayed that message in her mind over and over. "Can't wait to feel your arms around me again." It wasn't just words. It was intimacy. It was longing. It was proof, at least to her gut, that something was horribly wrong. From that day forward, she couldn't unsee the way Tom's phone never left his side. She couldn't unhear the faint chuckles when he typed late at night. She couldn't unfeel the distance between them, growing wider with each passing day. And though she kept quiet, Claire had already stepped onto a path she couldn't turn back from. A path that would lead her to the truth. Claire had always believed trust was the foundation of love. But after that night with the buzzing phone, trust no longer felt like solid ground. It felt like thin ice, beautiful on the surface, fragile underneath. She didn't want to accuse Tom without proof. She didn't want to be that partner, the one digging through private messages and inventing stories. So instead, she told herself she would simply observe, quietly, patiently. If there was nothing to find, she would put her fears to rest. But if there was, she would know for certain. Over the next week, Claire began to notice things she had once ignored. At dinner, Tom's hand never strayed far from his phone. He'd smile at it, thumbs moving quickly, then flip it face down whenever she leaned over. During movie nights, his laughter would come not from the screen, but from whatever glowed in his palm. When she asked who it was, he had a ready answer every time. "Just work stuff. Just a friend. You wouldn't care." His excuses were as casual as breathing. And yet the distance between them grew. He was there physically, but part of him was always elsewhere. Somewhere she couldn't reach. One evening, Claire stepped outside to take the trash out. From the porch, she heard Tom's voice through the slightly open window. He was on the phone, low and soft. She couldn't hear the words, only the tone, playful, intimate, punctuated by the kind of laugh he hadn't shared with her in months. When she walked back inside, he ended the call abruptly, slipping the phone into his pocket. "Who was that?" she asked, forcing her voice to stay calm. "Work call," he said without missing a beat. "Client stuff." But Claire had been with him long enough to know his tones. That wasn't a client's laugh. That was a lover's laugh. Her nights became battles with herself. When Tom fell asleep, she would glance at the phone on the nightstand, inches from her hand. All she had to do was reach out, unlock it, and the truth would be hers. But fear stopped her. Because once she saw it, once she opened that door, she couldn't unsee. So, she waited. For the right moment, for the truth to reveal itself without her having to force it. It came one afternoon. Tom had just returned from the gym, or so he claimed. He dropped his bag on the floor and headed straight for the shower, leaving his phone on the kitchen counter. Claire stood there staring at it. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. She tried the passcode, the one he had always used, the one he swore he never changed. It opened. Her breath caught in her throat. What she found was worse than anything she had imagined. Thread after thread of conversations, dozens of contacts, some saved under men's names but filled with the words of women. Messages filled with affection, with longing, with promises of meetings. "Last night was perfect. I miss you already. When can we sneak away again? I love the way you make me feel alive." Claire scrolled, her heart pounding with every word. There were photo selfies she had never seen, taken in bathrooms and cars, in hotels, receipts for bookings, dates that matched the nights he claimed to be working late. It wasn't just one woman. It wasn't just one mistake. Tom had been weaving a double or triple life right under her nose. Claire dropped the phone back onto the counter as if it had burned her. Her knees felt weak. She gripped the edge of the table, trying to steady herself as the room seemed to spin. Her entire relationship, 4 years of memories, laughter, dreams, suddenly felt poisoned. Every sweet word he'd spoken replayed in her head. hollow now, stripped of meaning. He hadn't just betrayed her with another woman. He had betrayed her with several. And as the water ran upstairs, masking the silence below, Claire realized something chilling. She wasn't just living with a liar. She was living with a stranger. Claire waited until evening. No speeches rehearsed, no dramatic plan, just the truth sitting heavy in her chest and his phone, now back in his pocket buzzing like a reminder of what she'd seen. When Tom walked in from the shower, hair damp, casual smile in place, she was at the kitchen table. The house was quiet in that particular way. Homes get right before something important is said. "Hey," he chirped, opening the fridge. "You want Thai or should I cook?" "Sit," Claire said. Her voice surprised even her, steady, leveled, not a tremor in it. He glanced over, smile flickering. "What's up?" She slid his phone across the table, unlocked. The message thread open, the one with the heart emojis and hotel reservations. "Who are they, Tom?" His eyes darted to the screen. A flash of panic crossed his face before the mask clicked into place. "Why are you going through my phone?" "Because my boyfriend has contacts saved under men's names who text him things like, 'Can't wait to feel your arms around me again.'" She didn't blink. "So, who are they?" He reached for the phone. She pulled it back. "Don't," she said. "We're done with grabbing. We're doing truth." He inhaled, tried to shrug. "It's not what it looks like." "It's exactly what it looks like." She turned the screen and read, voice flat. "Wednesday, 11:42 p.m. Room 608 again? I'll bring wine. Friday, 1:13 a.m. You make me feel alive." She slid to another thread. "New coworker named Mark, who signs off with a lipstick kiss." "How many, Tom?" He stared at the table grain. "It was a phase. A few messages. Nothing happened." Claire tapped the hotel receipt. "It happened at the Westfield. It happened at the Midtown Hyatt. It happened on nights you told me you were crashing at the office." "How long?" His shoulders collapsed a fraction. "A few months." She swiped to the oldest thread and read the date. 10 months. Silence. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a car door thudded. He tried a new angle of fence. "You violated my privacy." "You violated our relationship," she said, calm as a gavel. "There is no privacy for a lie that's living rent-free in my home." He exhaled, voice going soft, practiced. "We've been off for a while, Claire. You've been distant. I felt invisible. I made mistakes." "Plural," she answered. "And you didn't feel invisible. You felt entitled." He rubbed his eyes. "I don't want to lose you. You already did." The words landed without heat. She wasn't performing. She was concluding. He leaned forward, reaching for the tenderness that had always saved him. "We can fix this. I'll block them. Delete everything. I'll prove it." "Deleting proof isn't proof," she said, "and I won't be negotiated back into a life you set on fire." His jaw worked. "So what now? You leave? Over texts?" "Not over texts," she said, standing. "Over patterns. Over a year of choices you hid behind jokes and passcodes. Over a man who turned me into Plan B without telling me I'd been demoted." She placed his phone in front of him, the screen finally going dark. "I'm packing a bag tonight. Tomorrow I'll send you a list for logistics lease, utilities, my things. Don't call me at midnight. Don't send essays. The only messages I'll respond to are practical." Tom swallowed. "You're really going to throw away 4 years?" "You threw them away," she said, picking up her keys. "I'm just taking out the trash." She walked to the door, paused, and looked back once one last look at a room filled with the echoes of a life that had seemed so steady. "You could have told me you were unhappy," she said. "You could have told me you wanted out. You chose the coward's version." The door clicked shut behind her, with a small final sound that felt bigger than thunder. Grief isn't linear. It's loops and spirals and ambushes. Claire slept at her sister's the first few nights. The guest room smelled like laundry detergent and lavender-clean, uncomplicated air. She stared at the ceiling until dawn, stunned by how loud a heart can be when it's trying not to break. Tom texted on schedule in phases. Denial. "We can talk. It's not as bad as you think." Minimizing. "It was only messages with most of them." "You're overreacting." Blame. If you hadn't pulled away, I wouldn't have looked elsewhere. Bargaining. I'll change my number. I'll delete social media. Couples therapy. Grand gesture. A long paragraph about soulmates, a playlist of their songs, a photo from their first trip. Claire didn't reply. She wasn't punishing him. She was protecting herself. She sent one concise message the next afternoon, detailing pickup windows for his things and a shared dock with bills to transfer. Facts only. No oxygen for the fire. Friends reacted in waves too. The closest ones showed up doorbell dings with coffee. Texts that said, "I'm outside if you want air." Others expressed shock with a pinch of gossip. I always thought he loved the attention, as if hindsight were wisdom. A couple drifted away, uncomfortable with the mess. Betrayal rearranges your address book. Her parents were quiet, sad in that deep parental way, mourning not just the breakup, but the piece of their daughter's certainty that had been taken. They didn't say, "We told you," or "You'll find someone else." They said, "We love you. We're here." It was enough. Practicalities stacked up. A storage unit, a new set of keys, a meeting with a leasing office where she signed her name in a box labeled primary. She changed her streaming passwords, her emergency contacts, the ringtone that used to make her smile. Small things, but each one another thread cut. Nights were the hardest. Grief wants a stage at 2 a.m. She made rules for herself to keep the spotlight off. No rereading old texts. No just checking his socials. No rewriting history to make the good days proof the bad ones weren't real. She cried sometimes quietly, sometimes in those chest-deep waves that leave you breathless. And when the tide went out, she noticed something new. Relief. Not happiness. Not yet. Just the relief of no longer negotiating with a lie. Healing didn't arrive as a sunrise. It showed up as habits. Claire joined a therapist's Tuesday afternoon slot and kept it like a sacred appointment with her future self. She learned the difference between hypervigilance and intuition, between boundaries and walls. She practiced sentences that once felt impossible to say out loud. "I saw the signs and stayed. That doesn't make the betrayal my fault. His secrecy was a choice. My trust was a gift." She cleaned her digital life the way people purge closets after winter-old photos into an archive folder labeled past. Mute buttons used like sunscreen. A new phone background that didn't carry memories, just color and quiet. She ran when the weather allowed, walked when it didn't. Movement turned rumination into breath. She started cooking for one with intention real meals at a real table, proof that she was still worth setting a place for. On Sundays, she made a playlist that had nothing to do with him, and everything to do with now. She wrote a letter she never sent. To the version of me who saw that first message and felt the floor tilt. "I'm sorry you had to read the truth in a preview line. I'm proud you didn't let it bury you. You will trust again, not everyone, not blindly, but wisely. And you will trust yourself first." Months passed. Not all at once, but in grocery lists and clean sheets and new inside jokes with friends who stayed. She laughed without flinching when her phone buzzed. She noticed men at coffee shops and felt nothing urgent. That felt like health. Tom faded into the background noise of a life she no longer lived. When his name occasionally popped up, an auto-renewal. She'd forgotten to cancel, a final piece of mail forwarded by the landlord. Her hands didn't shake. She handled it, then kept going. Closure didn't come as an apology or a perfect explanation. It came as the day she realized she'd gone hours, then days, without giving him the starring role in her thoughts. The story had moved on, and so had she. Sometimes betrayal doesn't reveal itself in grand gestures or dramatic scenes. Sometimes it reveals itself in a glow on a nightstand and a single line of text that changes everything. Claire's truth arrived in plain sight. And yes, it hurt. It broke things that deserved better. It left her standing in a quiet room with more questions than answers. But the messages that shattered her also set her free. They replaced confusion with clarity. They handed her the map out of a life built on someone else's secrecy. If you're listening and you felt that same chill reading a notification you weren't supposed to see, hear this. Your instincts aren't the enemy. Silence and gaslighting are. Proof doesn't make you cruel. It makes you clear. Their betrayal is not a mirror of your worth. It is a portrait of their choices. The truth will hurt, then it will help. It will end what needed ending, so you can begin what deserves to begin. For Claire, the hidden messages weren't just evidence of a devastating betrayal. They were the first sentences of a new chapter, written by her, for her, with no one else's passcode required.